car, handcuffed. And that's what happened last night.
The police kicked in the door, shot him twice in the chest, and died.
Before you knew it, we had 500 families. We had over 100 volunteers calling us. We were on the phone constantly.
And I can't get, and I got one police department telling me they don't know who's in charge. I got another police department here. Everybody's got a gun, and nobody knows who's in charge. Did anybody figure out who's in charge yet? Is there anybody in charge here? Any police officer in charge? Are you in charge? I can't find anybody in charge. That's the problem.
Check. So just as the show was coming on, I figured out a tech issue and I got my audio working. Yay. What a day, huh? And how are you today? Thanks for joining us. This is Revolution Radio and my name is Brian Powers. Thanks for joining us. My music just paused for no apparent reason. Man, I can't get through an opening lately. I don't know what my problem is, but it's getting better. Thank you for joining me today. If you're a first-time listener, this is NJRR Live, and we come at you every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on the Revolution Radio Network. You can catch us on our website, www.njrevolutionradio.com, or you can like us on our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter at RevRadNat, or hit subscribe on YouTube. And we really, even if you don't watch on YouTube, do us a favor and hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. It helps us out. It helps build our network. It helps us reach more people, and it helps grow independent as a revolutionary. I do not think MSNBC is going to be doing the kind of stories that we do tonight. But we're going to get started tonight. Before we get into some current events, we're definitely going to we got to talk about a little bit of history, because today is one of my heroes, and I don't know many people in the revolutionary community that don't think of Malcolm X as a hero. And so a very happy birthday in paradise and resting in power, of course, is to Malcolm X. And it takes to listen to Malcolm. I think there's what people and what you're told about Malcolm X, and then there's who Malcolm X actually was. And the way that when you hear and when you listen to Malcolm X's speeches, when you get his vibe, when you hear him interact with the way crowds react to him, it's as if they made up a completely different person for the media than who Malcolm X actually was. Because Malcolm X was not some raving lunatic who wanted to kill white people and form a separate nation and all this kind of stuff. Although for a period of time, and we know he had his history, with the Nation of Islam and things like that. And as he, like everybody else, evolved spiritually and politically, right? So understanding, Malcolm's story is one thing. Looking at the way the media portrayed him is another thing. But actually listening to Malcolm X's speeches is probably the most important thing you can do. I mean, that's what the man's words is what he wanted you to hear. He didn't want you to hear him. Nobody wants to be heard through filters. Everybody's had rumors spread about him at work or at school or whatever, right? It's a shitty thing when you hear about what's said about you and you didn't actually say it, right? But so it's offensive on a larger scale when you see a mass effort to reinterpret your message, as we have done throughout history with so many people. And despite their disagreements, Martin Luther King, the same thing was done to him in the media. where his message was sanitized and made to seem as if he was some patriotic American. Neither of these men could be considered patriotic Americans. Thank God for that, right? Because they wouldn't have been able to put out the messages that they put out if they had more allegiance to this country than they did to liberation, right? So I was looking up some quotes, and I think, as a white guy, I think it's just kind of necessary that, we take in this thought, particularly from history, because it helps us understand what the role of the white people has been throughout history, as well as the black struggle. So I just want to start by playing a 2-minute clip from a speech called "White Liberals," and this was given by Malcolm X.
White liberals who have been eager to point out what the white men in the South have been doing to us, while they themselves here in the North are doing the same thing. They have been making a great fuss over the South, only to blind us to what is happening here in the North. And now that the eyes of America's 20 million blacks can easily see that this white fox here in the North is even more cruel and vicious than the white wolf in the South. The Southern wolves always let you know where you stand. But these Northern foxes pose as white liberals. They pose as your friend, pose as your benefactor, pose as your employer. They pose as your landlord. They pose as the neighborhood merchant. They pose as your lawyer trying to help you. They infiltrate all your organizations, and in this manner, by joining you, they strangle your militant effort toward freedom, toward justice, and toward equality. They use integration for infiltration. Throughout America, here in the North as well as the South, masses of black people are demonstrating against the oppression and exploitation of the white man. Our people have lost all fear of the white man. They have ceased trying to waste their love on the white man. And they have ceased turning their nonviolent cheek to the violent white man. And because of this new, fearless, more militant attitude on the part of our people, we see the increase of violence and bloodshed between the white oppressor and the oppressed, between the white exploiter and the exploited, between the white slave master and his 20 million ex-slaves. And where will all of this end?
So there's Malcolm, and I think that there's so much in that's relevant today. But when you talk about white liberals and liberalism in general, there's this narrative that, of course, the Northern armies went and fought the South and saved the South, as if, those of us that were raised above the Mason-Dixon line were the defenders of freedom and the liberators of slaves from the oppressors in the South. But really nothing could be further from the truth. And as I've said before on this program so many times, is it's not good and evil. It wasn't the good North versus the bad South. Just like it isn't the good people, it isn't the good oppressors today, the good bosses and the bad bosses. It's black and white. It doesn't work like that. It's not black and white, and pardon the pun, of course. In this country, it's thought of as black and white, but there's areas of gray in there. And we can even talk, in so in the North, you think that, slaves would go there and be free, but that's not what happened. You didn't show up in the North coming out of the South with no money and clothes you ran away in, and somebody said, "Hey, here's some cake and apartment and hang out with us now." It's not how it worked. You were just exploited differently in the North. You were subject to slave catchers. You were subject to all these kinds of other forms of oppression. You weren't free just because you'd gotten to the North. Just like you're not the discrimination or racism isn't over today. There wasn't an escape to anything. It was just moving on to a different level of oppression. I don't really think that if a slave got out of a southern state, came to New York, and was forced to work for pennies and live in squalor, I don't think he was really set free. And I think that we today still look at it as if we slightly improve our conditions, that everything's fine. And I think nothing could be said more about the Biden administration, that slight improvements to our conditions is making us feel that, Biden is some great socialist liberator. I wish he was. He's not. Although I am grateful for the money he's sending me because I had a whole bunch of kids. So let me just say, Joe, I'm still going to take your money when you send it to me. I'm going to bring in an editorial board member now. Belisha Beacon has come on board and been here every month dutifully to do movie reviews with us. How are you, comrade? Good to see you again.
I'm great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Happy
So
birthday to Malcolm X.
Right. And I think, as I wrap up, I wanted to bring you in for the wrap up on Malcolm X. Do you have any favorite speeches? Have you listened to him a lot, or are you just getting into him? I know that you said you're a newer activist, but you're pretty well read. You ever get into Malcolm?
No, but it is always so refreshing to see the human side of such a monumental, influential figure. To see like little reminders of things that make them, just a person who happened to step up into and the role of leader. So I like to know that side.
Yeah, like I said, we have this fiery image of a guy who's just kind of a rabble rouser. I think it's always, and that's said about a lot of revolutionaries, right? It's always easier to portray us as people just complaining or people trying to rally people up than as opposed to, just try to take the edge off the seriousness of the issues that we bring up.
Yeah.
But Malcolm, the part I love, it was funny. He was hilarious. He interacted in a way with his audience in such a personable way. And the reason he was such a great leader was not because he was angry. I mean, first of all, he had every right to be angry in the world, but it was because he communicated with people well and he educated people. And if white people can just let that pride slip just a second and get past the fact that he calls you a devil every once in a while and listen to the man, and what he's saying and the message he's carrying, all of us would be better off, all of us, regardless of color. But his humor is where he's gotten. This is from a speech called "The FBI and Black Muslims" that I was listening to a little earlier.
Of someone's right. This is not fair for them to do this. They know what I'm saying is true. It's what they do. They come knocking on our doors trying to frighten our little children. Are you a Muslim? What you look like asking our little children is that child a Muslim? I tell the old devil, you must believe it too, or you wouldn't be wasting all your money trying to track us down. One of those old blue-eyed things had the nerve to, a couple of years ago, to go to Philadelphia and tell the Muslims, they said, Brother Malcolm is talking about white people, and he's in New York living with a white woman. Imagine that. I told the brothers, next time the FBI come and tell you that, you tell them that if I'm in New York living with a white woman, it's his mother. His blue-eyed mother. And since she's living with me, if he says I can tell him what his mother is like. How nasty she is. How dog-like she is. Yes, you tell him that.
So Malcolm had quite a sense of humor.
Yeah, and I love that stuff. It's that Sarah Silverman joke about Martin Luther King. I think the setup is something like everyone loves Martin Luther King, but did you hear that story about did you know he used to roll up the windows in the car and then with his whole family inside and then fart? And that joke works because you have such a monumental figure, you have such a huge persona that you're looking up to. And you know, it brings it down to a human level. And that's part of the charm that, you know, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they had this charm about them that they
Yeah.
could relate. It wasn't just the flowery, beautiful speeches, which of course they were so intelligent and they were so you know, smart about how they were going about the things they were doing, but just how well-rounded they were as human beings.
I had an interesting conversation. A guy, I got some business going on up here, and he mentioned he was talking about how you learn to trust people, and he said, well, you know, if I gave somebody $1 million and they did what I said, you know, what I asked them to do, and then, you know, after a certain period of time, I would trust them because, you know, they took care of my money. And I said, well, what about con men? You know, like, how do con men get away with taking people's money and then not returning it? And people will even give con men more money over time. I mean, there's con men out there that'll take money from you, you know, $100 a month until, you know, you're out of money or whatever. So there's these, you know, so how do they get away with it? We started having a conversation about what it takes to build trust, right? And that's where they got their audiences, was having their audience trust that what they were saying was real, what they meant was real, and that it was coming from a place of, you know, enlightenment and empowerment. That, you know, and that comes with being personable, that comes with building relationships, that comes with, you know, great speech making and great, you know, communicating abilities.
And being relatable.
Yeah, but I think we, you know, it's not a one hit. It's because over time, you know, these civil rights leaders like, you know, Assata Shakur, Malcolm X, you know, Martin Luther King, built relationships with revolutionaries, and that's why we look to them and trust them, and still, you know, follow their guidance and their words today. You know, I mean, because they built trust with us. I trust Malcolm, even though he's gone, and I'll never meet him, and I wasn't alive in his time, but I trust that what he was saying was true, because what he was talking about was real.
Right. Yeah. It resonates.
It does. It still resonates today. So I encourage people, if you get a chance, on YouTube, Spotify's got some great Malcolm speeches on it, or whatever platform you can find some Malcolm X speeches. After NJRR Live tonight, go ahead and do some Googling and go to YouTube University for a little while. And I promise you, not only will you learn stuff and be inspired, but you're definitely going to get entertained a little bit too, because he's fun to listen to. I had a great time today listening to him to pull some quotes. So that's that. Let's move into your pet project, which turned into a regular thing now. This is 3 months in a row that we're getting together and we're reviewing a movie. It's 4 movies for me that I watched, because I watched the wrong movie this morning. I would see a little meme, like when you tell your comrade that you're going to review The White Tiger and he watches White Tiger, because it's exactly what I did. It's exactly what I did.
By the way, the link that you sent me, I'm intrigued now.
It's a great movie.
We'll have to do that next month. I don't know.
The movie that we didn't review, we're not going to review, that I watched anyway, is about a Soviet tank crewman who loses his memory and is hunting this white tiger tank, and it's you know, he's tracking it down for the war. Of course, it's a modern day Moby Dick. The
Okay.
You know, it is Moby Dick essentially, but with a different twist. Yeah, it's
tank.
Right, with an army tank and during World War I. So there you go. But it's Moby Dick essentially, but really well done. It's in Russian. I watched it with English translation, and I had a great time. And then I texted and sent some links to my comrade, and she said, "Oh, that's not the right movie."
Yeah. So this movie, The White
It tells
Tiger,
about the right movie.
Yeah, this one is The White Tiger, not just White Tiger. This is only available on Netflix, and it's an original film. It's an American film which takes place in India, and it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars this year. It's based on the New York Times bestselling novel of the same name, and it's a social satire about in my opinion, about our current, our current way of organizing our society, and the perfect anti-capitalist film. So the movie follows Balram, who is the main character and the narrator of the film. On display in this movie is India's very deep-seated, religiously endorsed, culturally ingrained caste system. So, what did you think of the movie, Brian?
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll tell you, it's going to get a better rating this month than Nomadland did last month. And we should listen, if you haven't heard our movie reviews yet, you go back last month, and before it won the Oscar for Best Picture,
Yes,
our great movie reviewer here knew that we should do it. So take a listen back on what we said before it won Best Picture. But I'm going to give this movie more fists than I gave that movie. I'll be honest with you, because it's more. It spoke to me more about our current trends in global economics, right? So this kind of rat race that Americans are famous for is now a rat race that everybody can take part of. So we can all kill each other for money.
Right.
How wonderful. And that's kind of like so if you get satire, that's basically what this movie is overall. It's like, look at how great capitalism is. And spoilers, by the way, people, there will be some spoilers coming out here. But, we can kill people. We can run over children and get drunk and do all kinds of things because we have plenty of money. And look at how awesome that is. And what you should really do is strive to be exactly like us. So you can get away with all this nonsense too.
That's right. Yeah. Balram, he lives in extremely impoverished conditions. He's told by he's very bright as a child. He's told by his teachers that he is a white tiger, which, is kind of like the exception to the rule. His entire life, he's been conditioned that he's of the servant class, and that he's meant to serve the upper castes in his society. And he kind of connives and manipulates his way into a job as the driver for this very wealthy family who has political connections in India to I'm not sure what it is in India, if it's like a prime minister or a president.
Yes. I don't even know if they say the candidate's name. They just refer to her as the Great Socialist.
The Great Socialist, which I thought was so interesting.
They don't even name the candidate for prime, or it's the current prime minister who's running for re-election is only known as the Great Socialist, much like the waitress in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or
I really wanted to hear your take on this, Brian, because in my opinion, this character is a representation of how the system itself is the defining cause of the collective suffering. So you cannot, under any circumstances, reform the system or have any hope of reforming the system based on a single person or political party.
I think it also, so it tries to demonstrate how capitalism and this kind of strive to get out of poverty. I don't think initially, that the character is motivated by wanting to be rich. Essentially, he's motivated by wanting to get out of these dirt poor conditions that he grew up in. And his father tragically dies of tuberculosis when he's young, and there's a whole family side to the story, which is equally as gut-wrenching. Probably the most gut-wrenching part of it is the way that these families are kind of manipulated and used by the system as a whole, while he's being manipulated individually. But his reaction to this, which I see in people all the time today, and this it really tries to put a microscope on the idea that people not accept and love their oppressors. I mean, this character takes a murder rap for this guy for no other reason than he told him to. Like he sat down, was like, "Here, sign this and confess to murder." He's like, "Okay." It's that level of brainwashing in a caste system, right? Where you're basically told, you actually believe that you're doing a good thing by serving your master. And we've heard this rhetoric in Frederick Douglass's narrative, in Malcolm X, who we just talked about, who talked about how slaves were divided amongst each other in order to keep some hierarchy amongst the slaveries, so that the master could be on top of a system as a whole. And he even talks about that, Bahram in the movie talks about there's nobody that the second driver hates more than the first driver, right? So he's put in this guy's service, and he's made the second driver. And his main enemy is not the dude who's threatening to kill his family.
Right.
It's the other driver.
Right. Exactly. Yes. So let's talk about the master. Let's talk about Mr. Ashok and Pinky, his wife. So these are two Indian American characters who serve as a kind of stab in the gut to the limp, performative American liberalism, right? They're so concerned about Bahram. They defend him when Ashok's family disparages him, when they mistreat him, when they physically abuse him. But then when it comes right down to it, at the end of the day, when it's down to Bahram or them being held accountable for their actions, they are more than willing to go ahead and let him take the rap, because they already feel like his life has less value. It's not as such a great a loss if he takes the rap in case anything happens. And that is the turning point of the movie. That is the point in the movie when Bahram wakes up from his conditioning, and he becomes aware of how everything really works. And then he connives to break himself out of that mold. Can't hear you.
I'm muted, wasn't I?
Okay, yes, I hear you
Yeah,
now.
that's okay. I didn't say anything. No, we have to. I was going to say that before we give our fist ratings, we have to put out a little call for money. I didn't get the little graphics because we need more. I need more studio editing time. I need more time for people. That costs money because I don't. People don't work for free around here. Not at Revolution Radio. This isn't. We don't do that here. We try to pay our people well.
We're busy and surviving capitalism.
That's right. And so, look, chip in a little more because I need little tiny fists on the bottom of the screen when we give our ratings.
Yeah,
it's very important to me. But I guess my question to you is, what did you think of the movie overall? Let's hear your rating first, because I'd like to hear, and I want to hear a comparison out of the last two movies that we watched. Which one you liked better?
I think this is my favorite movie because I think I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 fists. Because the what's expected is, you have this character, you're rooting for them, and then they become a bad guy, right? All of a sudden, halfway through the movie or 3/4 through the movie, they become the bad guy. They do something really wrong. But you still want them to succeed because everything is stacked against them. And really, this is the only way that they can get out of the situation they're in. The other forces that are working against them they're employing the same brutal tactics against this character, and they have no mercy. They have no conscience. And so when the character turns around and does the same exact thing back to them in the same fashion, in the same non-apologetic fashion, you can't really judge them for it. You still root for them because it's the only way. It's still going against the grain, and so as an audience, you're taken on this journey of, you know, right and wrong, and, you know, the underdog, and then all of a sudden the underdog becomes this you know, anti-hero, and you still go with it. You're still rooting for them by the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's complex, and it shows the complex nature of an oppressive society or capitalism, and it shows how these relationships build a system. You know what I'm saying? So this is, you know, representative of a lot of relationships under a caste system in India, but again, parallels to the American capitalist system and the global system of capitalism, which seems to be forced on world populations all over the place. And so I too will give it 4 stars. I almost gave it 4.5, but I want to be kind of a jerk. We've only started this a couple. I want to leave room. You know what I'm saying? I want to start the bell curve. Maybe a few months down the line, and would have gotten 4.5 stars, but I got to take in more movies. Maybe if I take in 2 every time, I'll get there.
Many more, much better films still on the horizon.
Warren's on the chat, as he always is on the chat. Warren, love you, brother. Thank you for hopping on and tell us. Christian, I know we miss Christian. And we got to take off, though. You know, like we don't get paid and stuff around here. But, you know, so I tell you, donate, Warren, donate, become a member of our editorial board. Yes, Belisha is back again because Belisha's a member of our editorial board. She shows up to meetings and chats with me, and she's the one that picks these movies that we review. And like I told her the last time, I want it heaped upon me, helping expand my horizons and as well as support Revolution Radio, Belisha. So thank you so much for coming on this week. You got anything to plug? You got any charities or organizations or events going on out there that we need to send money to yet?
Not at the moment, but please become a member of Revolution Radio.
Yeah, you're having a good time. And we're going to see you again next month, right?
Ideas.
I'm going to show you. You like the cat on Catnip calendar? You see my cat? I
love that calendar.
No. I've been, since you mentioned it, I kept it up for you. There you go. All right. Thank you very much, Belisha Beacon, everybody. And she'll be back next month to join us. You know, and look, we need more Belisha Beacons in this world. Not just doing movie reviews, though, but we're looking for all kinds of activists out there. So if you're into entertainment, if you're into social justice movements, if you're into news and reporting, if you go to rallies and you want to start helping live stream, it's actually where we got our roots in New Jersey, was me going out and live streaming at rallies and actions and keeping an eye on the police. Very important. That camera is a weapon that you can use against the police. That's why they try and take it away in France and in other countries. So we will get back to those things because the country's starting to open up. I'm vaccinated, and 2 weeks in, I'm fully ready to go. I can hug and kiss people, and Joe Biden even says I can go outside without a mask. I'm very excited about that, and I will be taking him up on that. I have been. It's awesome. I love not wearing a mask. I know some people like wearing a mask. I'm not going to make fun of you. If you're still wearing a mask, good for you. I like wearing a mask. So anyway, really quickly, before we get into tonight's main panel, which is a very serious topic and one I've been meaning to get to since the outbreak of, well, not even since the outbreak of, let's just get into what's going on there. Hey, Patience, nice to see you. How are you? But I want to mention that as we've been plugging away at the editorial board, we also have to thank the Coffee House in Edison, New Jersey. Coffee House has supported us since we got started. We're doing another show there on June 22nd. Starting around 7 p.m. I may start earlier. I'll be honest with you. I started booking the show and getting guests ready and sponsors lined up and doing I got a big show. I got a big show to do. And I can't wait for you to be there. So if you're one of the original Revolution Radio supporters when we were New Jersey Revolution Radio, or if you're not, you're just catching on to us because of the Ida Vox report, Daryl Lamont Jenkins, Christian Perez, you know, the crew will be there. I believe she's down in Florida, so she's not going to make it. But maybe we'll get to Florida later on in the year. Who knows? I'm ready to travel. I know that. I'm ready to see all of you, comrades. So thank you very much. Join our editorial board. help us come up with contents. And if you want to see a show from Revolution Radio come near you, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, or email info@njrevolutionradio.com. And, just let us know you want us to come to town. We'll figure some stuff out. All right. All right. So we are going to bring in our special guest tonight, Shehnaz. Shehnaz, how are you?
Good, Brian. How are you?
So, I don't want to characterize what's going on right now as a resurgence or the start of anything. I mean, this is just a continuing story that those of us that have been following can, go back into the history books and say when all this began. But I'm not going to get into that because I think what's more important these days is that people understand that there are moments in time where you can move things forward. And I think we saw that with George Floyd. I think we saw that because the people had enough. It was a moment in history where we could have a sustained movement that made a difference. And I don't know that it made all the changes that we want to have made. But I certainly hope that this is a moment in history for, the Palestinian people to move forward and start to get some justice after. But I know it's dark days right now. What drew me in and had me reach out to invite you on was your Facebook posts, and I'm just going to read I think one that really grabbed me yesterday. Shehnaz wrote, Palestinians in Gaza running from their homes to escape bombings or dare to venture out, seek shelter somewhere that is being bombed less. They have been terrified when they step out into the street. Many have said they don't recognize where they are because of the destruction, facades of houses blown out, streets obliterated and turned into crumbled cement. Some streets have huge gaping holes. Some buildings are completely destroyed with bodies buried underneath. Schools, mosques, clinics, almost every inhabitant, their street has faced destruction and erasure with the intention to kill and terrorize. Israel will pay for its crimes against humanity. And I couple that quote with the video many of us seen about the young 10-year-old girl crying and pleading in front of some destruction near her home. Before we get that, so it's that kind of expression of both facts and emotion that had me reach out. And Shehnaz, I want to thank you very much for coming on the air with us to deal with something I know that's very personally painful for you. So thanks a lot. You referred to me when we talked a diary called a website called thegazadiaries.com. Or I'm sorry, agazadiary.com. And you can take a look. This dates back to 2014 when there was an escalation of violence there. Can you tell us how that blog got started?
Yeah, sure. So I met a young lady at a university. She's coming here to study from Gaza, and she was traveling overseas when the massacre, I call it the massacre of 2014, started. And I was in contact with her family because I got to know them on WhatsApp and on Skype and stuff. So I was tired of two things. I was tired of Western media portraying Palestinians there as monsters and terrorists, and Hamas using them as human shields. It was just completely dehumanizing, right? And at the same time, you could read Arabic news, right? And I get it. Like, we are resistors. We will overcome, and we are, but it was at the same time portraying Palestinians as these superhuman people is also dehumanizing. So I started just basically on my Facebook post, I would just put down the conversation that we had with the young lady that I was communicating with there and her family. And soon people were like, Shehnaz, this needs to go on a blog. Why don't you put it on a blog? And I agreed to it because I wanted to reach as many people as I could, because I wanted them to understand that we weren't just media material. We are not just what you idealize in your head. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, these are real people. Here's one family out of over 2 million people living in Gaza.
Yeah. And dehumanization is a part of genocide. I mean, in order to erase something, you can't. Nobody wants to think of themselves as killing or getting rid of an entire culture. So you have to dehumanize the person. So you thought it was a thing that's part of it, and just like African Americans are discriminated against, just like any segment of society which we want to portray as bad or evil, we don't recognize their humanity. I mean, and I can tell you, I don't need to tell you that Palestinians have some amazing food, some great music. There are Christian Palestinians and all manner of Palestinian culture that's out there. And I know that that's what we need to come to appreciate about a culture. And if we don't appreciate those things, it's very easy to paint them in one box, and it's unfortunate. So, you got involved with telling human stories, and I see you still continue that today. Are you still in touch with people who are trying to reach out during what's going on right now over the past since 2014, 7 years?
Yes, absolutely. That they are my family. They are definitely my family. And this week, and I mean, I talk to them almost every single day prior to this. So this week has been especially harrowing, if you will. It's listening to them and listening to the background noise. I can only imagine what they're going through, but they're terrified. Now, the young lady that I had talked to before, and we would talk, and I would put up all the conversations I had with her, and sometimes talk to her mom and her brothers and her other sisters. She's now pregnant and married, and it's a completely different monster, right? This was 7 years ago. She's an adult now. She's looking forward to having a family, but there's tears, there's fear, there's a hope to see her child. There's a real fear that she's going to die. I mean, the house is shaking and rumbling, and she said there's something different. And she's not the only one in Gaza who's saying this. There's something different about the weaponry that they've been using. Some of it is silent before it reaches you, which is, Palestinians have been saying this for decades. Israel tests the weapons that the United States gives them or sells them on us. This is really, I mean, if you think about it, this is something that every human being on earth should care about.
This is not, and for our audience, this is not a conspiracy theory, and there have been well documented. I've seen a documentary, and there's some videos of, like, you have any other industry convention. You could have a yarn convention, you have a t-shirt manufacturers convention, they have car manufacturers conventions. There are weapons manufacturers conventions where they brag about military operations conducted by Israelis as proof of their product. And it's the worst form of capitalism. And I guess we should get into a little bit of the politics of it. And for those of you that haven't dug into the history of the Palestinian people, and I'm sure, Shehnaz, you have some recommendations on how people could get educated besides what they've been taught, because I think in America we have to still unlearn some things before we can learn some things. But getting into the politics and how we got here, when do you view the problem as started? Do you go back to the partitioning? Do you go back to the Roman invasion? Because, what I read about pre-World War II Palestine, and I've never been there, and I do have it on my bucket list, and I've met so many wonderful people from Palestine. I really, really hope that I can get there sooner rather than later, to be honest with you. But is that it's a mixed community, that there are Muslims, that there are Christians, that there were a lot of different ethnic groups, including Jewish communities living, and then this mass colonization effort started by European Jews. And we had the Nakba, which is known as the tragedy. I believe that's the interpretation of Nakba. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Do you view the start of problems as that, or do you view it as in the longer context of history?
I mean, Palestine has never really been free, if you will, right? We've always been under somebody's rule and thumb. But 1948, under the newly created Zionist state of Israel, right? It has been horrific. With the creation of the state of Israel, people don't understand that there were actual massacres, right? That have been undocumented. There have been massacres that they have tried to write out. They have tried to sell the history as an empty land for a chosen people, which goes back to a narrative of superiority, white supremacy, right? Colonialism. It's horrendous. Palestinians are sick and tired of being ignored. We're sick and tired of being abused and being the targets of violence. And we're sick and tired of the world, right? Just completely turning their backs on us. And I live here and I was born here. But when you're born Palestinian, this becomes your issue. Okay? This is yours. You have to be a part of something, and you have this people that there's people that we're related to, right? There's a history that we pass on to our children. This is not going to go away. This has been over 70 years of occupation and colonialism, settler colonialism. And Palestinians there are tired in the West Bank, within Israel, in Gaza, right? So, I mean,
I feel that frustration for you. I can empathize with that. Do you think, and here's what I honestly think, I think there's a rise because of social media, because Palestinian people, because of oppressed people around the world. And we saw, uprisings. I know in the long run, things played out as they did, but in Egypt and in other places where at least we got some social uprisings started. I think Palestine Palestinians have latched onto that as well. Do you think there's more consciousness globally about what's going on? And because this is my kind of opinion that the bourgeoisie just have not and will never catch on. But I don't know if global consciousness can lead to change. I get the sense that more people know what's up in Palestine. I get the sense that more people are calling Israel's on their bullshit. And like you said, these narratives that Israel put out, they don't change. So maybe it's that I'm just getting older and I've heard the same lines of shit for 44 years out of Israel now. But, and we've heard this one example in the mass media a lot of, well, when we bomb children, it's because Hamas puts rockets near them. But when they bomb us, they're terrorizing us. It's an insane logic. It's just so crazy to think about, like, well, we've got good bombs that are killing children while they're the bad people, even though we're killing dozens more than them. Do you think people are catching on to the bullshit more? Do you think, or you do?
Yes, I agree with you, Brian. And I think that the power of the internet, the power of interconnectedness now has really put in the hands of Palestinians, really, in Gaza, in the West Bank, inside of Israel. They are able to get those images out without censorship, although there has been censorship on Facebook and other social media platforms. But what I'm saying is you can't shut it down. The imagery's there. Their voices are there. You cannot continue to turn your back on human beings. This is like full-blown genocide. It's complete bullshit. We have these fucking political actors all around the world. Silence. What the fuck are they afraid of? What are they afraid of? I don't understand it. It's like it reminds me of like these they're all kindergartners and they're in this yard. Israel's the big bully and everybody wants to be on their side because they're afraid they're going to do something to them. I don't fucking understand that. Regular everyday people around the world can see through that. I think what we need to do is redefine the power structures. People don't believe they have power. Individuals do not believe that they are powerful enough to change things. This is what this top to bottom thing, That's what powerful countries and nations and structures want us to believe. But in fact, if imagine all this power, each and every individual has a specific amount of power. Imagine that power igniting all over the world. It's going to shake some sense into them. We have more power than we believe. So write to your congressman, get out in the streets, really shake things up, right? Share these narratives and these stories. Confront people when they lie. Confront them with truths.
Yeah. How much have students meant to BDS? I know there's always parallels. When I would organize or I'd be hanging out at Rutgers, there's always parallels to the struggle against South African apartheid and the struggle against the apartheid going on in Israel, Palestine. How important are students to this movement?
Our students are absolutely vital to this movement. As a matter of fact, this movement encompasses so many different spaces, if you will, right? It's what's happening on the ground in Palestine. It's what's happening on the internet and through social media. It's what's happening on campuses. It's what's happening with Palestinians who go to work every day and have to listen to people sometimes talk about this, right? These struggles are real and they happen in very small spaces. Students are absolutely vital, right? Because Israel has how do you say, they're always working on different fronts. Do you know that they have what they call an electronic army that actually works to terrorize Palestinians? And this is true because I've spoken and they showed me the Facebook messages. Somebody who poses as an Arab and actually sends out messages to Palestinians in Gaza because they already know, they hack their stuff, they know their family, and they start asking them, so doesn't your brother live on this street here? And the person has to think about it because they're like, do I know this person? They're actually terrorizing them. They're terrorizing them. They're putting the fear into them on purpose. Then you have them working on campuses through student organizations, right? Also trying to shut down a lot of the organizing on campus for Palestine and for Palestinian human rights.
No, yeah, we've all seen it.
Yeah, you've seen it. And I was at Rutgers for 13 years, right? I saw a big shift from when I first went there, but still, students are absolutely vital. You're right. And I think that they're going to have a lot to do in the fall. But with the narrative shifting, and I think people being more aware, the problem now that stands is how do we change the like, for example, universities? How do you change, the structures, the administration there? How do you change the how do the Congress here? You know what I'm saying? The power structures need to also change, right? So now it's kind of like a push and pull. Yes, we see small things going on with Congress and the 29 people like Rashida Tlaib and sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here.
That's okay.
Gets me a little upset.
It's all right. I wanted to ask you about moving forward because I understand the frustration, but even if there are things that people will say are impossible or can't happen, I'd rather set goals that everybody says are unattainable than rather try to take the liberal aspect of let's just do what we can get. But there's always short-term and long-term goals. And so I think, ultimately the long-term goal is liberation. And I've heard the chant from the river to the sea. What does, and also, we have everybody's suggestions about what a compromise should be, but that never interests me. And it's compromise when it comes to justice, and particularly in the case of genocide, there's really not a lot of compromise there because the other side wants to wipe out one side. So it's very hard to strike a bargain. I'd rather pursue justice and I'd rather pursue peace, to be honest with you, because while I don't believe Israel has the right to exist, I believe that human beings have a right to live in peace. What does peace look like? I mean, what does justice look like for the Palestinian people in your mind?
Well, I spoke to my family actually maybe an hour ago, and one of the young girls there, she's 17. I told her I was going to come on your show, and I asked her, what do you see as the solution, or what is it that you want the world to know? What do you want? Because you can pose that question to me, Brian, but it's not fair for me to answer because I'm not living and breathing that every day, right? So I asked her, and I'm going to read it to you guys. She said she wants the world to stop Israel's violence. 70 plus years is enough. She wants to live like everyone else. She wants to travel the world, grow up and be something. She wants to feel safe. She wants to remove the blockade. She wants the borders to open up to them. They want to feel like human beings. They want to feel safe at home. She wants to be able to work. She wants clean water and electricity, just like everybody else. She wants to see the West Bank and Jerusalem. And they all want to see their children grow up. Okay? These are very simple, basic human rights, right? I asked her, what do you think of Palestine? What do you think? She says, we want our lives back. We want our land back. We want, the world to see us as human. So, justice. You mentioned justice before. They want accountability too. And I posed this question to her today before I got on the show, but I had posed it to everybody else in the house. So these are a combination of a lot of them, but majority of these are hers. So that's what every Palestinian, I'm sure, whether they're in the West Bank, whether they're in Israel, whether they're in Gaza, will give you the same kind of answers, right? Gaza is a special place because it's been under blockade. Its infrastructure has constantly been under attack. Its people have been constantly being killed. Whole families have been wiped out. Okay, children. Half the population in Gaza are younger than 18 years old. They're children. Okay, so these are just some of the things that I have been listening to, because, like I said, it's not fair for me to answer that. This is an answer from a 17-year-old girl in Palestine, in Gaza.
Your work has brought those voices over here. So while I think, we have to make sure that we're amplifying those voices as best we can. And I know that you've done your part and coming on tonight. I know it wasn't easy. This isn't easy. And I think, our audience has heard people that have been through some shit and then still come on the air. And we always note that there's some bravery, but you're definitely up there and guests that really had to push past a lot of, personal emotions. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on. And I know that our audience benefited from hearing you tonight. I want to make sure that our audience, I know our audience, and if you're listening to me out there, whether you're listening to me on a podcast or on YouTube, or whatever, I'm always telling you to give a little money because, listen, lefties hate asking for money. I got to tell you, none of us are in this for our own personal benefit. And I know that Shehnaz doesn't want me to promote her business, and I won't because out of respect. But if you know who I'm talking to, you know where to go to eat. That's all I got to say. All right. But, look, people need to give money because sometimes that's all they can do. Shehnaz, is there an organization or charities out there, or how, if there's people at home that can't get out in the streets too much, how can they be of assistance? You mentioned writing their congressman, getting on some of these petitions. Are there any organizations that you support and would like to see a little more shekels go their way?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I think that, I don't know if you guys know this, but Palestine Children's Relief Fund, their office actually, maybe it was yesterday or the day before, I'm sorry, I lost track of time. When they hit the Ministry of Health in Gaza, they actually hit the top part of the building. That was their offices. They destroyed it. They just recently built a cancer center for children there. By the way, Gaza has some of the highest cancer rates in the world. And I wonder why. Maybe it's the phosphorus and all the weaponry and all that shit. But anyway,
gotta be.
Palestine Children's Relief Fund, United Palestinian Appeal also does. They're based out of Washington, D.C. They do also some wonderful work, grassroots projects. UNRWA, United Nations Relief Works Agency, which was created for Palestinian refugees. You heard the United States had cut off funding and all that shit with Trump. And then there's, if you want to really like help out locally students, Palestine Legal is a fantastic organization that helps students on campuses navigate legal system, the legal systems and administrations and their rights on campuses as well as they face down, Israeli, whatever you want to call it.
Let's end this because I insisted at the beginning that people get to understand Palestinian culture a little better because I think it just helps. And one of the things I love in this world, because I'm a growing boy, is food. What is I know that you've been known to prepare a Palestinian dish or two. If somebody's not familiar, and here's what I'm going to give you another mission. Give money to one of the wonderful organizations that Shehnaz just mentioned. But I would also like you to stop into your local Palestinian restaurant. And Shehnaz, if they haven't been to one of those places yet, what should they be ordering?
Well, we have a beautiful dish called imsachan, which I don't know, maybe people who are vegetarian or vegans can't eat that. But there's so many side, salads and hummus and stuff like that. And I don't call it Palestinian, but there's specific dishes that are Palestinian. The rest of it is Arab food. We don't, claim this is Israeli, Lebanese, right, or like the Israelis do. They've been snatching up our food and trying to take away our culture. But yeah, imsachan is a beautiful dish. It's made on Palestinian bread with onions and sumac and chicken. And it's very traditional. It's served with a wheat soup. And it's just one of the staples of our, in our tradition and culture, food culture. And we have something called makluba, which is upside down. It's like rice, layers of rice and vegetables and chicken that we cook in a pot, which can also be made vegetarian or vegan. And then once it's all done, we flip it and you have this beautiful display of all these things, and it's served with salad and yogurt. So makluba and imsachan.
Even if you don't like the Palestinian food, grab a bottle of olive oil on your way out and put it in with your Italian dishes because the best olive oil in the world comes from that region. So Shehnaz, thank you so much again for coming on tonight. And I really wish you the best of luck with all your work and your family and your comrades over there in Palestine. I do nothing but pray for peace in that area and as well as the rest of the world. So thanks again for coming on tonight. And please, check back in. Let us know what's going on. And if you have updates for us, please make sure you reach out and let us know. All right.
I appreciate that, Brian. Everybody give to Revolution Radio.
There you go. You can give to Revolution Radio too. Thank you very much. All right. So Shehnaz, thanks for joining. And like I said, it's a very painful thing to talk about when people in the region going through that. But like everybody else that comes on the show, we get strong people on Revolution Radio. That's the show. That was a good one too. I enjoyed it. Serious topic, serious issues, but in the end, it's good to get this information on there. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Jessica Barakal. I'm gonna edit that out. Jessica Barakal from Jersey City. Newest editorial board member, and she helped me prep for tonight's interview. Gave me a whole bunch of questions and told me how to approach it because it was such a serious subject. I reached out to some comrades like we should always do. Join the editorial board. Go visit www.njrevolutionradio.com. There's a little link there. You sign up. It's $25 a month. And you can be a part of this. I want to thank our audience. I want to thank Belisha. I want to thank Leah, Jessica, Christian, who's going to be back soon. Don't forget, June 27th in the Coffee House, Edison, New Jersey. Stop by until next week. Am I going to be here next week? Let me see. I'm off next week. It's Christian's show next week. So Christian's going to be next week. So until 2 weeks from now, this is Brian Powers, and I want to remind all of you that the police can quit their jobs. Peace.
thrown against a car, handcuffed, and that's what happened last night.
The police kicked in the door, shot him twice in the chest, and died.
Before you knew it, we had 500 families. We had over 100 volunteers calling us. We were on the phone constantly.
And I can't get it. And I got one police department telling me they don't know who's in charge. I got another police department here. Everybody's got a gun and nobody knows who's in charge. Did anybody figure out who's in charge yet? Is there anybody in charge here? Any police officer in charge? Are you in charge? I can't find anybody in charge. That's the problem.